Thanks everyone for joining me. I'm excited to talk to Shiloh about finding and looking for love when we travel. We all see those amazing romantic movies, and I know things have changed a lot since I was, single, let's say. And so I have lots of questions. I'm excited you came on to share. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So, women were always, I think, are a little bit more the romantic types than the guys. So we've all been places. I know I had some long distance relationships. Tell us what inspired you to kind of lean more into being a relationship coach.
Thank you for asking that. So yes, I'm like so many women where I dreamed of love, an amazing love story, not just, when I was a teenager, I would look around me and go, I don't want a marriage like that.
Yeah.
I don't want a marriage like that. And all these people are getting divorced. So from a young age, I was aware that we had a problem, right? That we had this big
Yeah.
dream. We love weddings. We want to get married. But often it doesn't last, and even when it does last, it's not satisfying, really satisfying, right? So I did a lot of research, and I read all these books on it, and I thought that I was going to, beat the odds, and I was going to have this great love, and I was going to have a partnership and kids and everything, right? And anyways, it took a lot longer than I hoped to meet someone, which is also a common story nowadays. But after I met my husband and got married and had kids, we started having problems. And I went, what? Like, I've been to therapy, I've read all these books, like, he's a good guy, I'm a good woman. This is like scary and frustrating. And when you go to talk to people about, like, if you express yourself, you kind of get one of two options. It's either, that's just marriage. Like, you're
Yeah.
just kind of, that's growing up, like, you're a mom now, it's busy, there's not really, it's a season, you just gotta put your own desires on the shelf, like, it's okay, like, you'll reconnect, whatever. Like, they try to downplay the sadness that goes along with having a stale or cold marriage. And then the other people make it all about who it is. And they
Yeah.
say, well, if you're not happy, that's kind of code for, like, spin that wheel again. Try someone new, right? And I always just thought, like, neither of those options feel right to me at all. Like, I've got a really good guy who I waited a long time to meet, who I know has so many of the traits I desire in a person. So there's no way I'm going to divorce him. I got two small kids. Like, that would, I
Yeah.
didn't want to, but also would feel foolish, like naive
Right.
in a sense, right?
Right.
And then the idea of just repressing my feelings, whether that's my longings or my sadness, I'm not wired that way. Some people, they have to work at feeling their feelings, and they can kind of shut down for years. A lot of women can kind of shut down when they get in that phase, but I was just activated. I was irritated. I was, this is not working. This is not working. It was like
Yeah.
sirens were going off that were saying to me, if you don't do something about this, it won't last. Something, because women will often talk about how it's like a switch flipped.
Yes.
They'll be resentful for so many years, and then a switch will flip and they don't care about that person anymore.
I know.
Doesn't matter if they did everything right after that point, they're just like, I'm done. And because we have only so much capacity to tolerate that experience. So I knew that I couldn't do that. I wasn't going to do it. So I decided to humble myself and figure out what I was doing wrong here and stop just trying to change him and his emotional responses, his communication. And I said, okay, this is something that I desire. Because I had the kind of situation where he said things were fine, which is kind of typical too. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, I'm having these problems. And they're like, it's not that bad. Like,
Right.
why do you have all these problems? And that can go back to our childhoods, right? Our relationship was better than his template for relationships. So it was like, not bad, right? Like, pretty
Right.
good. And I was like, no, it can be so much better than this. So, and I think he knew it was hard too, but his coping strategy was to put it on a back burner, right? Like,
Right,
we'll just
right.
soldier through, and maybe it'll be okay later. I can handle it, like, whatever, right? Not communicating, not ask for his needs met. So I went and I discovered that I was not creating emotional intimacy in my relationship. that I would, or emotional safety, that the way I was complaining, the way I was criticizing, the way I was expressing myself, which I thought was really honest and vulnerable, was also very judgmental, was also very critical. And this is typical, like we were not shown how to communicate in a way that is clean energetically, that you're not dumping your stuff on someone else, you're not projecting your stuff on them. And so once I discovered this whole deeper understanding of what creates emotional intimacy, I turned our marriage around in about a year.
Wow.
And I can do it much faster with my clients now because I know what I'm doing. But what I thought immediately was, this has to be a problem for so many people because we're really typical. We're not outliers. There was no,
Right.
and there was no, severe trauma. It was just normal trauma,
Yeah.
normal trauma, and which most people have some of, and just different attachment styles and different personalities and different ways of coping with stress. And so I thought, it is so heartbreaking to me that a lot of divorce is not because you guys can't be happy together, it's because you don't have the skills to be happy together.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. That's really wonderful. And that you've kind of tapped into something that you can help others. Because you're right, we hear about these long-term, parents, grandparents even, that where you're like, they were married all these years, and you're right, something all of a sudden switched, and they're like, nope, we're done with each other. And you're like, all that time you could have been truly happy. I mean, life is just too darn short not to be happy for both people.
Yes, that's it. It is too short, and I totally believe that. Like, we have this finite life. And the way I think of it is, if you want to have an extraordinary relationship, like you want to be one of the lucky few who has, passion years later, who has connections years later, it's not the luck of the draw. Like, I thought it was the luck of the draw. I thought, this is scary because it seems, when I was a teenager, I thought some people get it, but most people don't. So it's kind of like winning the
Yeah,
lottery,
right.
that you have this great chemistry that lasts. And it's not actually like that. It's what it is those people who you think are lucky, they actually have the skills to have good relationships. Some of them got it from their parents and they come from a long tradition of healthy relationships, but some of them quietly learned it. Like, I speak to a lot of older women, I have a lot of older women friends, and they'll say, oh yeah, I did that in my marriage, around 20 years in. I
Oh,
realized, like, because people stayed married for so long, they sometimes had that opportunity to mature inside the relationship, which is really what I'm talking about at base. Is there's a maturation process that has to happen if your relationship will reach the status of like harmony, long-term satisfaction, because our immature single selves, like, it's just ego driven. We want what we want, we think we're always right.
yeah.
Person would get their act together, we would be fine. And
Right.
it's very humbling to face that we're co-creating this dynamic. If anything is going on in a relationship, it's not that you're both to blame, it's that you're both responsible for creating that. And so once you understand that, it's humbling and be a bit shocking at first, but it's super empowering because now you don't have to wait for that person to do their work and figure out their stuff. You can start shifting things on your own.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. So, talking a little bit about travel, when we're traveling, oftentimes, especially when we're early 20s, or now I think even as teens, we always see that guy, that woman, and we're like, there's kind of that excitement of travel mixed with, meeting new people. So often that we think that we have this spark. Can you talk about finding love a little bit when you're traveling? Are those good times to find people? Is that a recipe for disaster? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I love that question because it's true. The people you meet when you're traveling,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of fairy dust sprinkled on them, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's because you are lit up. So when you travel, you're this gorgeous, alive, wide-eyed, sparkly woman because you're in your element and you're open-minded and you're looking at everything like an opportunity. So the first thing to think about is that that's why they have fairy dust. It's because you do. It's not that they're different because you're in a country where all the men are fabulous.
Right.
It's because it's because you are bringing an energy that is making you very, very attractive and also attracted to people. So the word of caution is, it's kind of like you're drunk. You're like, everybody's so wonderful. This is so much fun. It's so romantic, right? And so you do want to be aware of that. The skill to take with you is if you're like that at home, you will meet men. If you step out of your house in the city and walk down the street with a skipping your step, looking around like what a beautiful world it is, you'll meet men because you will attract that energy. So I call it travel eyes. Like when you can consciously be like, what if I had never been here before? What would I look at? How grateful would I be? Because when you travel to another city, it's just a city,
Yeah.
but it's new and the novelty of it sparks you in a way. So that's one part of it. And then the other part of it is if you want to have a real relationship with someone you meet while traveling, you have to keep your standards. So whatever standards you have for your dating process, I hope you have some, whatever those are, don't throw them in the bin because now you met a man and your Vegas rules apply, because people go wild on vacation because they're outside of their community, they're outside of the local context, you're outside of that structure, which can feel restricting, but is also very protective. The structure that you have in your community, your friends, and the people who might look at you sideways if you were going wild is kind of good because it keeps you double checking. Am I protecting myself? Am I valuing myself? And the other mistake we make is we project all that value onto this fabulous man we meet. Well, he's so wonderful. I have to have him. So I'm going to break all my own rules so that I can nab this person. And when you do that, you lower your value in his eyes. Because you have sent the message that you're going to bend over backwards to have him. So keeping your standards can be scary. You think you might lose people, but it actually makes you appear more valuable because you are more valuable when you have standards, right? When you don't just, go with the flow in every single dimension.
Right. And that is a hard one. That's a good one to point out.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is what I learned when I healed my marriage is that dating advice is the best marriage advice because it focuses on one person, you, and because it focuses on these things like worth and boundaries and high standards, which you can still enact in a relationship, in a marriage. We just think, oh, now that the rules have been set, now that the silent contract has been built, I can't do anything differently. I'm roped into this dynamic. But if you take, again, like travel eyes to your relationship,
Yeah.
go, what if this was the beginning and I still believed I could do whatever I wanted? I still believed I could take care of myself and have my own lifestyle. Even after having kids and you've been together 10 years, you completely change the relationship because other people respond to how we view ourselves, how we treat ourselves. If we say, what, I need time to exercise, I need time to see my girlfriends, like I'm going to go, as opposed to being like, oh, he never gives me any time, so I can't.
Right.
we fall into this victim stance essentially in long-term relationships that not only dims our light because we're not doing the things that light us up, but it makes us treat our partners as perpetrators. If I'm a victim, it's because you're a bad man who is a bad husband and doesn't do things right. And you can see how immediately all the attraction collapses. I always joke it's because when you get married, now you're family and you get family problems.
Yeah.
Right? Like families fight, families project stuff onto each other, families have all those roommate issues, like, who carries the load and who's doing this and that. And we need to remember that this person is your lover forever. This is the person you met, and you thought was so interesting and so amazing. We need to keep those glasses on for the duration of your relationship. Because once you treat them as like your brother or your annoying dad, that's the energy you're bringing from your family of origin, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Good tips. So, what are some things that women can do to stay safe if they're meeting people when they're traveling, they're in a new place? I know you mentioned the standards, but are there things they should watch for? Just,
Well, it's a good question. In general, you want to do just like you would at home, which is you're there with other people. You're not getting isolated on a boat somewhere. I had someone invite me on a boat trip, and I was like, no, we're not getting
no,
involved.
yeah.
Scary, right? any time that it just seems so romantic, you're just gonna go and follow him, you know, on his trip to his place, to his stuff. Like, resist that. Stay in the center. Go to somewhere where you know people, where you're familiar with what's going on. But it's also a big part of it is not the rules, and this goes along with everything being a woman. It's really trusting your gut. Like, you have to be connected to your intuition when you travel solo. And I think that's one of the big benefits of it, actually, is you're with yourself, you're making every single call of which way to go, who to spend time with, etc. And if you're looking for somebody else to tell you if it's okay, if you're looking at superficial markers like, oh, he was dressed nice and, you know, he seemed like he had a nice family or he had good English, you know, those are not, they don't mean anything. Like, they don't mean anything, because as we know, very high class men are dangerous as well as very low class men are dangerous. It just, but your body will tell you how safe or dangerous someone is if you allow yourself to make those spur of the moment decisions. So I started learning this. So long time ago, after I had a really big breakup, I was like, I need to learn how to be alone, and I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna go out on my own, because I always loved traveling, and I was always, nobody wants to go. People are lame. You know, I was having this annoyance with no partner and pity party about no partner to travel with. And then I thought, no, I need to just go,
Yeah.
because this is ridiculous. I'm waiting too long, and I also want to just learn how to have that joy and not go, oh, I wish I had someone to share it with every single time, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, so I thought I'm going to, I was living in Vancouver on the West Coast at the time, so I wanted to do a little route around there. And I thought, I don't want to drive. I didn't have a car, so I didn't have a car at the time to live in the city. I thought, maybe I'll bike, I don't know. But then I thought, what about hitchhiking? Because then you can be really footloose, like you can go anywhere and
Right.
you don't have to go back to your car, and you can hike through and stuff like that. And so I started doing research on the internet, and I found a woman who traveled all over the United States hitchhiking
Wow.
solo. And she even went with truckers and everything, like the whole gamut, right? And she was so interesting, because she said, if you trust your gut and you don't get in a car that you don't trust, that's the first thing. Don't be like, oh, I really need a ride, so
Yes. Yes.
go. So she would just wait. She would just say, no, thank you. Like, that takes guts to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Someone offers you a ride and you're like, no.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing she said. And then the other thing that was really impactful to me is she said that we don't realize how powerful we are. She's like, if you're in a car with someone and they start doing weird stuff, they have to drive. Like, they can't actually grab you or anything.
Right.
They're driving, right?
Right. Yes.
And she said, and if you're assertive with your voice, usually that's enough. So she said in all her travels, I think she only had three situations where the men started coming on to her.
Right.
And she tell them off and tell them to drop her off right now. And they would.
Really?
Yes. And it got me thinking about even like the Harvey Weinstein. You hear there's always some women who said, hell no, and just stood in their power.
Right.
And the way I see it is that 90% of predators want an easy target. They don't want someone who's going to stand up to them and be difficult. They want someone who's scared and compliant. And so from Weinstein to truck drivers to dates,
Yes.
the concept follows that if once you start getting a weird feeling, and it's not women's fault, our instinct is to turtle. Like, that is our instinct. We freeze, and women will beat themselves up. Like, why did I just freeze? And I
Right.
didn't fight and I didn't say no. Well, that is normal. So don't feel bad for that. But you can train yourself to go, okay, the minute something feels funky and the hair on the back of your neck goes up, you say, I'm gone, like, bye.
Right.
And you explain yourself, and you don't care if they say you're being mean and, oh, I'm sorry, you were on, it's, you know, they do all that BS.
Yes. Yes.
You just say bye. And so when I read that, I went, you know what? This world is a much safer place than we give it credit for. Number one, this woman hitchhiked all over the United States and, you know, wasn't left in a dumpster.
Right.
And number two, we don't give ourselves enough credit for how much power we have to create the dynamics, to leave dangerous dynamics. And so I decided I was going to hitchhike. And I went from Vancouver over to Vancouver Island. And then there's a ferry that goes from Vancouver
Yes.
Island across to the States up to the Olympic Peninsula.
Yeah, yeah.
Went there and across. I just took the bus on that first part. And then I hitchhiked from that point over to the coast, hiked down the coast, and hitchhiked all the way back. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
That is incredible.
And the number of people who picked me up who were my dad's age and said, "Oh, I have a daughter your age." And they were just these sweet paternal men who did not sexualize me, no sexual energy at all. You know, when you can feel the energy, there
Yeah,
was
yeah.
nothing like that. They
Right.
just were so protective. I had women who picked me up who said, "Oh, I hitchhiked all over the place in the 70s. I used to be just like that." And they were so lit up by getting to be part of this experience.
Yeah.
That's over. The era where everybody used to hitchhike is over. But
Right.
it's because it's more dangerous. It's because we're more scared.
Thank you. Yes, that's so true.
So 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 yeah, so I went on that. I met a man who owned an Italian restaurant in Halifax and brought me over there and fed me, just loaded me up with food for free and like is a friend now. That was the coolest thing. But the most amazing thing is I met my husband on that trip.
Oh, you did. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So I got to tell you that story.
Yes, you do. So you're out hitchhiking and you meet the
Yeah.
man that you're still with today.
Yes. So this is how it went. So I was going down the west coast of the Olympic Peninsula, and I'd never done a long through hike on my own. I was like, this is long. I'm scared.
Yeah.
But there wasn't that many people because you can't through hike in a car. You have to come in from different locations and go back out. So, anyways, I would get up really early to miss the tides because the tides can come right up and kill you, right?
Right,
Sweep you out
right.
to sea.
Yeah.
So I was like, reading my tide map and hiking at 5 in the morning, and then I have a nap in the afternoon and stuff. Anyways, so I'm out pumping water one day at the thing, and some man comes by and asks me about my water pump and all these questions. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then he goes. And then another time I'm sleeping in my tent at noon because I don't have naps.
Yeah.
And I hear this man say, "Hey, is this copper mine?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, it is." And then, he left. And then one morning I'm hiking and Long Beach and like some of them are slippery rocks and stuff. It's kind of
Yes.
hard, but long beach walks. And this woman passes me. And then about 5 minutes later, this man catches up to me. And he's 6'2". He's in phenomenal shape.
Yeah.
And he's got this beard. I like the rugged types. And he starts chatting to me. And super tons of chemistry right away, right? And I'm
Yeah.
just like, stay calm,
Right.
breathe.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want to be like so giddy that it's ridiculous. And at this time, I had been single for like 5 years. Like
Oh, wow.
I was meeting no one out, and this was after my big breakup. I was meeting no one I was interested in. I was becoming very despondent and hopeless about it. Sidebar, if I knew then what I knew now, I would have known how to attract a relationship, but I had no idea what I was doing like everybody else. And so I was like, oh my God, this guy's so cool. And we started talking and we talked for hours. Like we walked together and talked for hours. And then we catch up to this woman. It's his girlfriend.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, first of all, who hikes for like 3 hours without their girlfriend? I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, hey, like I can head on. They're like, no, hang out with us, have your snacks and whatever. And so we sat and had our snack. And then I realized that so the trailhead would end, and then there was a big river that went in, and then there was a next trail. So getting around that river was actually a really long way.
Yes.
And there weren't a lot of people. And I was like, I need to ask these guys for a ride to that trailhead, or I might like not make it.
Right.
So I got up the courage and I was like, can I get a ride to the next trailhead? And they're like, oh yeah, no problem. They were doing a van trip all down the west coast of the States
Oh, wow.
together. So they had like a canoe on the back and stuff like that. And I just thought, oh, this has got to be the woman of his dreams. Like they're doing this cool trip. Like they're
Yeah.
probably married. Like what, I'm screwed or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But so we get in the car and he says, oh, we should exchange information. So we all gave each other's Facebook, handle, which is amazing. It's thanks to Facebook. Nowadays it's kind of like that, isn't it? So we exchanged our Facebook information, and then they dropped me off to the next trailhead, and I said bye. And I thought to myself, I could marry that guy.
Wow.
I was like, that is the kind of guy. The energy, he's very intelligent. We had really deep, interesting conversations. He's obviously cares about fitness and being outdoors. Like there was just this amazing mesh. And then I thought, but he has a girlfriend, so I'm not going to contact him. I'm not going to do it because I would clearly
Right.
be fishing and poaching if I did that. So I finished, my trip. I hitchhiked back to Seattle where I met that guy with the restaurant. I went
Yeah.
and stayed with a girlfriend and I told her, I said, I met this guy, and I just told her, I said, it gave me hope. It gave me
Right.
hope that there's the kind of guy out there that really is my type, who meets a lot of the standards I have, and it's possible, right? And so I went back home to Vancouver. And literally a year later, I had decided to go back to the Olympic Peninsula because they have an inner hiking area, which is the Hoh
Oh,
Rainforest and
yes.
Solduck
Yeah.
Trails. Yeah, which I was like, well, I did the coast, but this place is so amazing. Like, I want to go
Yeah.
back there. So I was going to do that one the next year. And I thought, I'll contact him. I'll see what's going on, just to say, like, hey, I'm going back there, whatever. How you doing? So I messaged him on Facebook and I said, hey, I'm going back to the Olympic Peninsula, just curious how you doing or whatever. And he said, oh, I'm in New Brunswick. I broke up with Christina in Argentina 6 months ago.
Oh my gosh.
I'm Canada. We should get together. So
Wow.
he literally drove. He was doing more of his road trips. He's driving across Canada, and we talked on the phone, and we planned a little hike up Mount Garibaldi, and totally hit it off. And we're like dated, got together. And here's one thing though. This is what you said about the long distance. It made me think, because I had done some long distance previous to him and did not like it,
Yes.
because the fantasy that is created by long distance is total fantasy. It's not reality. You imagine how wonderful to see this person. The distance makes you all excited. The deprivation makes you all excited. And then you see them in person and the vibe is like bad. Like, it
Right.
happens a lot. So that had happened to me in the past. And so we literally went on this one hike, and I just said to him, look, I really want to get married and I really want to have kids. And if you don't want those things, like, tell me now,
Right.
because
Yeah.
no way, I can't do that. And he was like, actually, those are things I want to. And
Wow.
I was like, wow. And then I said, and then we started going. I said, look, I want to stay home with my kids. I don't want to have to work when they're small. And he said, I want that for my kids. Said, I don't want to live in the city. I said, that's fine. I don't want to live in the city. But then I said, I will not date you long distance. And he was like, what? And I was like, no, because I don't know you, first of all, like, at
Yeah.
all. Like,
Right.
we've just really met. We have great chemistry and great intellectual connection. But like, because he was traveling all over at this time,
Yeah.
he had the biologist by trade. So he'd worked in the Yukon as a biologist, and then he'd quit his job and gone traveling. And he was really shocked by that because, Vancouver's super expensive. He had no job there. He had no reason to be there. He's a very active person, doesn't sit still. And I said, no, there's no way I'm dating you long distance. Like, it's not real. I won't know how to get to know you. It could take 4 times as long to get to know
Right.
the
Oh
person.
yeah.
And so he rented an apartment in Vancouver. And that was, looking back on it, those were things I did instinctually from my experience, but are advice I would give a woman. Like, do not mess with long distance if you can help it. And if you can, make him come to you, because that energy is way better, because it's an indicator of how serious he is.
That's true.
Whereas if you make it really easy for him and you just go wherever he is, that's real nice. He gets a treat. He gets a girl who's doting on him and coming flying over. But then he might not be that serious about you. He might just be enjoying the relationship, enjoying the vibes, right?
Right.
So yeah, so he stayed in Vancouver and we got to know each other, and 9 months later we got engaged and moved to Nunavut to save money to build a house, lived there for 2 years, and then moved to Nova Scotia and built a house and had kids. And so we've been together almost 9 years now and married for
Wow.
7.
That's amazing. What an incredible story.
Yeah.
But
So
you're
you can,
right. You did lay out, just like you said, sticking to your boundaries right there from the get-go.
yeah, yeah. No, and you can meet someone when you travel, because the person for you is anywhere. There's no rule on it, right? They could be traveling, they could be at the coffee shop, they could be at your school. You want to take the attitude that they're around the corner and live like they're around the corner, not like, oh, I have to hunt them down and they're so hard to find. Like, all this mindset that modern women have is so detrimental to our finding love. It's all about how hard it is, how unlikely it is, and how we have to put ourselves into knots to find it.
Right.
So then how does that work? First of all, you never see it when it's there. And then you act in such a way that you're not showing your true self, which means you're not going to get what you really want. Like, I was really scared to say those things to him. I didn't know that he was family minded. I
Right.
saw this good looking, intelligent traveler. I thought this guy's got to be a player. Like,
Yeah.
whenever
Right.
you see a big burly man, you assume he's just exploring his options
Right.
infinitely.
Right.
A
Exactly.
lot of them do, right?
Right.
And even, that he wasn't married to that woman he'd been with a while. I thought, well, maybe he doesn't believe in marriage. Maybe he's someone who just,
Yes.
not really. And you know what? He didn't really believe in marriage. He thought you don't really need it. And I said, well, I'm not going to live with someone unless I'm married. So I guess what I want to say is that I know it's scary to admit your true desires, because it was for me. I thought that men wouldn't want those things that I wanted. I thought it would scare them off for me to be so forward right at the start of meeting him. But I'm so glad I was, because then you don't waste your time.
Right.
If you're in the market for a marriage and kids, like if that's really your heart's desire, there's men who really want that. And they
Yeah.
don't want to waste their times either,
Right.
you know? So being really bold is something that, and it's not a demand, right? Like if you're with a guy for 8 years and you're like, I want to get married and have kids, now you're demanding it because you're so resentful and you're sick of this BS you're stuck in. But if you say it on day one, it's just really open-ended. You just want to know, and that guy can walk away. And I remember the thing that I admired about my husband so much is I thought, I can't scare this guy off.
Yeah.
The heavy conversations, and he is the kind of person who's intense like me. So it's a good match, right? We don't need it to be really superficial or really, casual forever. We don't want to waste
Yeah.
our time. And so, yeah.
Oh, I think those are some really good points because you're right. A lot of us as women, we think when we're dating, and I remember this too, it's like, oh, if I tell them I want this or if I want to be serious, they'll just disappear. And now I'm back to
Yeah.
being alone and sad. And,
Right.
so you're right. We
Exactly.
hide what we truly want, and all we're doing is delaying getting what could be the best relationship, the right one.
That's it. And you want those guys to disappear. Like you
Yeah.
do. You don't want to spend 3 years on them and then them say, I'm not really ready yet. I think the biggest thing I learned from my breakup relationship, and what I see women make this mistake a lot, is we date men who are really fun but are not ready for a relationship. And then we think that we're going to make them ready for a relationship. But the first question is, are they ready for a relationship? And sometimes it's things that women don't take as seriously, like a man will want to establish himself to a certain level in his career, or he'll want to have certain experiences and adventures. And if he hasn't had those, he's not ready for a relationship. And you can be someone he really loves and thinks is fabulous. But if he hasn't completed those landmarks in his maturation, you should walk away. You really, really should. And occasionally the walking away will mature him. Don't do it for that reason. But
Right.
occasionally he'll go, okay, I need this woman, so I'm going to make it happen. But if you hang around, it will never happen.
Right. What
Yeah.
about dating apps? I know there's a lot of dating apps out there now that weren't out there,
Mhm.
years ago. Do you have tips for people when they're scrolling through these dating apps?
Yeah. So the same thing as in person, be really bold in your profile. What you want, what you desire, and because what you're doing is you're shining your light, just like when you walk down the street. What you want to do is shine your light so clear and so bright that the people who are for you are going to be like, wow, there's a woman who's vulnerably saying, I want children, instead of trying to play it cool, which isn't even the truth,
Right.
right? Like, if you don't want children, fine. But I remember when I was single for a long time, people would say, like, oh, how's it going and whatever. And I would just say, I don't like being single.
Yeah.
I would say, I want to be married. And they would
Right.
kind of get a little uncomfortable because they're used to women saying, it's great, I'm so independent. Just crap most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And but like my mindset was, if these people know somebody, they're going to remember me and they're going to say, that nice girl I met and this nice guy I know, we should get them together. Like, you're networking in a sense, right?
Right.
Like, and when you're networking, when you're putting yourself out there in the world, you want to be so bold and so honest. So in your apps, you put, I want a dating relationship that leads to marriage. I would like to have children, and I would like to have children. I would like to have whatever type of dynamic you like in terms of roles. Put that in there. If you want to work and not be home with the kids, put that in there, because those are deal breakers.
Yeah, those
You want
are.
to put the stuff in that if it's not a go for them, you can't be in a relationship with them. They don't want kids, or they don't, they don't want to be the primary breadwinner, so you can be home with your kids or whatever. Like, you want to know really, really what you want. And this is, again, I think what I matured into is, when you're young and idealistic, you think it's all about the vibe. And that is more wrong than anything, because vibes don't get you through life.
No.
Kids, postpartum, job loss, illness, parents dying, like, all these hard things will rock you. And marriage is supposed to stabilize that. It's supposed to be, okay, we're together on this. We got 2 points of strength. We can buffer some of these different difficulties in life. And so you need a man who's very mature, who can who's grounded, who's going to be like, understand the practicalities of life. He's responsible. Those are things I remember my parents used to always say, oh, the most important thing is character. And I thought, boring,
Yeah.
boring.
Right.
Why? Like, I thought character was easy to come by. And now I realize it's not, of course, character, you want honest, blah, blah, blah. No,
Yeah.
you want character, because character, like, there's all this conversation online about men cheating, right?
Yes.
Oh, do all men cheat? And can you even, get a faithful man? And all men do not cheat.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
lots of men who don't cheat ever. And it's not because their relationships are perfect, it's because of who they are. They're men who have such a high level of integrity that they would never allow themselves to break their own word.
Right.
And that is common. It's very, very, there's lots of men like that. But if your mindset is all men cheat, you're going to tolerate that. You're going to let men in your life who've cheated on all their exes and think you're going to be different. Like, these are also standards, right? Like,
Right.
what is this person's track record? Do they have the self-control to maintain their integrity? And you know what? All these rules apply to you too.
Yeah.
So if you've made some mistakes, and if you've been sloppy in your boundaries, and you've kind of dabbled, some women go from one guy to the next, and
Yeah.
the crossover is a little too much, you need to clean that up. You need to get honest, because in the same way that your light is shining, the things that you don't say are shining too. Your character is shining through, your habits are shining through. And so if there's not alignment between who you really are and who you say you are, a man with a lot of integrity will know that. He'll say you're flaky. That's language men will use for women like that. She seems flaky. Well, it's like, is she grounded? Does she mean what she says?
Right.
Can I trust her?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Really good information. Oh my gosh. Yeah, really true tips. So what about traveling once you've met someone? I always say this because it's like, when I met my husband, it's like we took this cross country train, trip, and
Right.
I figured, if we can't get along on this trip and be flexible, right there, that's another deal breaker, because traveling
Right.
presents a lot of challenges. And the fact that I always love traveling. So if this person doesn't want to travel and be open to new experiences, deals
Right.
off.
Right. How did it go for you?
It went great. We stuck
Yeah.
together and we realized, things happen when you travel. Your bag gets lost, or you miss the train, or you have to run to make the
Right.
connection or whatever. And I realized right then, like, wow, we can really trust each other. I can depend on him. He can depend on me. It's not always fun and games because it was a budget trip, so it's not like all happy days. And
Yes. No, I love that. I think that traveling is a good compression of time.
yes,
Like, when you go on a road trip with someone, or when you hitchhike, or when you travel with someone, it's like you spent 24 hours with them
yes,
in stressing situations,
yeah,
right? So I
exactly.
do think it's a really good way to get to know someone and really see what they're about. I think what's interesting too is that it's totally different than solo travel. So if you've both been solo travelers, it's not the same.
No, it's not.
Not the same. And the key there, and this plays out into your whole life of relationship, is really expressing your feelings, needs, and desires. Like, you might need some solo time. You might be like someone who gets up at 7 and hits the road. You might be like someone who sleeps till noon and has a coffee in the local thing and sees what happens.
Right.
But if you don't talk about that, there's going to be a lot of miscommunication and a lot of frustration, and why are you doing this thing and whatever. So definitely use that travel, if you're going to do that with a guy you met, don't use it as an opportunity just to observe him. Because sometimes I think what we do as women is we do this silent observation. What's he going to do now? What's he going to
Yeah.
do? Right. But which has its value because you're seeing what he would do without you there. Right. But what you also want to test is how does he respond to you? Does he care how you feel? Can he handle you having a different opinion than him or a different desire or a different need? Because that's what I've really discovered about marriage is that you change over your lifetime, right?
Yeah.
A lot. And
Oh,
children
yeah.
change you hugely. And so if you can't in real time update your needs, desires, and feelings and be with someone who can integrate those and go, oh, this worked before for her, but to now and in this season she's asking for something different. If you don't have that flexibility, that's why people get divorced at life landmarks. They get divorced when kids are 7 years old, when they can handle themselves. They get divorced when kids leave for college, right? And they get divorced at retirement. And that's people always go, how could they go for 30 years and then get divorced at retirement? It's like, well, all the rules changed again.
Right.
All the rules changed. Now you're together all the time. Now the roles are gone. Now this person who maybe got a lot of satisfaction from work is not working. They're having a weird thing
Yeah.
about and so again, I'm really against this narrative that if you just have the right person, it will work forever. Because it's not about the right person is important and it helps. But if you can't navigate all the changes internally and externally, eventually you're going to be different. And people will say, we grew apart. Or I grew and he didn't. And I always have it always irks me when I hear that, because that speaks to lack of communication. You went on your own path and you looked at him and said, oh, he's on a different path. I don't like it. You didn't say, I have a need for this and this and this. You didn't say, I want, to know what are you doing? Or I want to do new stuff, or I'm not happy with the type of lifestyle we've created for the last 20 years. It was great. I appreciate it. And now, like, women are I see this particularly with women. Women are dynamic. We are cyclical. We are rebirthing just a lot.
Right.
And I actually believe the healthier we are, the quicker we cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're constantly discovering newness in us and going deeper and having this really rich relationship with ourselves. And when that happens, it's like this man is going to be married to 20 different women, and he's going to be usually more slow moving. Men don't usually change as quickly because their nature is the steadiness, right? A good man is, you're going to pick one who's steady, and then you're going to be annoyed that he's steady. So be prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't blame him for being steady. That's what you wanted. That's a good thing. But also, don't think that you have to be the same. Your evolution is beautiful. It injects new life into the relationship. It sparks his inspiration to build new things for you, or make you happy in new ways, which is enlivening to him too. One of the biggest lies I see is that we need compatibility, which is sameness, right? Like, we need the same interests, we need the same temperament, and that's actually not attractive. So what's really damaging about that narrative is that you're not attracted to people who are the same as you. It's differences that are sexually attractive and sameness that builds friendship. So that's why you have a bit of both in a healthy, a long-term relationship, and you want to really honor the difference and celebrate it, as opposed to chafing at it and resisting it, right?
Right. Oh, this has been fabulous, Shiloh. So tell people if they want more information on all the things they're talking about, whether it's, they're looking at new relationships, they need to feel better about themselves so they can attract in a good partner, or if they've been in a marriage for a long term. And we all know as women, we fall into ruts, or we can fall into periods where we're like, this isn't what I signed up for. But I love how you've shared that you can really change all of that.
Yes. Thank you. So the first place is my website, www.shilohminer.com. And that tells my whole story. So if you kind of want to see where I'm coming from and what I'm about, that's a good place to go. I'm active on Facebook and Instagram. So Facebook, you can go to my profile, shilohminer.com. Instagram is Shiloh the Love Coach. I'm sure the notes will all be there. I know you're not going to remember this. But what I have is two offerings. So one is a program called the Happily Married Woman, which is like a digital course. And this is if you're married and you are not in what you signed up for and you want it to be better, this is the program for you. It really walks you through all these skills and mindset shifts and communication skills you need to create that new relationship. And I've had clients say it totally saved their marriage. Like they were like, I don't think I can be in this anymore. Like they were doing the silent retreat kind of
Yes.
because their husband thought it was fine.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, now I get what I was missing and how I can create the parts I'm missing. That's one part. And then I also do one-on-one coaching. So when it comes to the one-on-one, you can be in any phase of life, right? You can be, hey, I need to figure out how this getting into a relationship works, or, should I stay or should I go? Do I take it to the next level? Because I remember so much when I was dating, I always wanted help with that. I thought, is this a normal difficulty or is this a difficulty that requires leaving? Is this a good match? Like there's
Yes.
no guidance for that in our world. And again, like I said, in the media, it's all or nothing. It's this guy's your perfect love and you have no conflict, or, oh, it doesn't feel that great, so leave.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, that's not real life. That's not real life at all. And
Yeah.
it creates a lot of idealism and or sticking way past the due date. So we get these kind of poles we swing. So yeah, so you can message me on my website or on Facebook. And if you have any questions, we can just chat out, what's going on with you. If you're a good fit, I'm very open and welcoming that way. I don't mind getting messages from people who are curious. Um, but yeah, please, if you're someone who wants an epic love story, know that our culture will not teach you how to do that. And you
Yeah.
go deeper.
Oh, I love this, Shiloh. Thank you so much for your time today. And what a gift that you've discovered and are willing to share with others. So I'll put all of that in the show notes, your website, how to reach out, the course, and just have a conversation with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun reliving all those days and meeting my husband on the road. It's so exciting. And it's Mother's Day today now, and I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I just thought, the gift
Yes.
keeps on giving when you meet your person, and to really stay connected to what a blessing that is by telling the story is wonderful. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thanks.